It was just past 11 p.m. when I decided to order some food. Living alone in a small apartment on the edge of the city made late-night cravings a bit of a hassle, but thankfully, there was a 24-hour diner that delivered no matter the time. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse, and cooking was the last thing on my mind. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that makes you keenly aware of every little sound. I picked up my phone, browsed through the menu of Eddie's Diner, and settled on a cheeseburger with fries. Simple, quick, and exactly what I needed. The app estimated a 30-minute delivery time, perfect for a quick shower. After placing the order, I headed to the bathroom, letting the warm water wash away the stress of the day. The sound of running water was soothing, drowning out the silence of my apartment. By the time I got out, dried off, and changed into comfortable clothes, about 20 minutes had passed. I checked my phone for any updates but found none. Probably on the way, I thought, settling onto the couch to scroll through social media. Another 15 minutes ticked by. Now 45 minutes since I'd ordered. I opened the app to check the status, and it showed my order as delivered. Confused, I walked over to the door, peering through the peephole. Nothing. No one was outside, and no food was left at my doorstep. I called the diner, and after a few rings, a groggy voice answered. It was odd, considering it was a 24-hour diner. Eddie's Diner, how can I help you? The voice sounded tired, almost like I had woken him up. I explained, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Hi, I placed an order for delivery about 45 minutes ago, and the app says it's been delivered, but I haven't received anything. There was a pause, and then he said, let me check on that for you. More silence, followed by shuffling sounds, and then he said, looks like your order was marked as delivered by mistake. Our apologies, I'll get your order out right away. Slightly reassured, I thanked him and hung up. It struck me as strange though. Eddie's was usually spot on with their service, and this was the first hiccup I'd encountered. An hour had passed since my original order when I heard a knock at the door. Finally, I opened it, expecting to see the usual delivery person with my late-night meal. Instead, a man I didn't recognize stood there, holding a plain, unmarked paper bag. Delivery, he said, his voice flat, devoid of the usual friendly demeanor I was accustomed to from Eddie's staff. He was tall, with a hood pulled over his head, casting his face in shadow despite the hallway light. Something about him set off alarm bells in my head, but my hunger pushed those thoughts aside. I thanked him, took the bag, and handed him the cash, including a tip for the inconvenience. Closing the door, I took the bag to the kitchen. That's when I noticed two things. The bag was unusually light, and there was no smell of food coming from it. My heart rate picked up as I opened it, finding not my order, but a single cold sandwich wrapped in plain paper, and a note. The note was hastily scribbled. Sorry for the wait. Enjoy. No name, no signature from Eddie's, just an anonymous message that did little to explain the oddities of the night. I examined the sandwich, finding it to be nothing more than a simple ham and cheese. Nothing like what I'd ordered. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The delivery man's obscured face, the mix-up with my order, the strange note. It all added up to a situation that felt increasingly sinister. I locked my door, double-checked the windows, and tried to convince myself that I was just overreacting. Maybe it was a new guy who got the order wrong. Maybe the diner was having an off night. But the nagging feeling wouldn't leave me. I decided not to eat the sandwich, tossing it in the fridge, telling myself I'd figure it out in the morning. As I tried to settle down for the night, every little noise seemed amplified. The silence of the apartment felt oppressive, filled with a tension that made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even though logic told me I was alone. That's when the first knock came, soft and hesitant, from the front door. I froze, every instinct screaming at me not to answer. The digital clock on my nightstand read 2 a.m. Who could possibly be knocking at this hour? And then, as if to answer my unspoken question, a second series of knocks, louder and more insistent. The knocks came again, a demanding rhythm that sent shivers down my spine. I stepped back, unsure of what to do, when my phone buzzed with an incoming message. Hesitantly, I picked it up, the screen illuminating the dark room with a notification from an unknown number. The message was simple, but it chilled me to the bone. "Did you enjoy the sandwich?" The message on my phone sent a wave of fear through me. My hands trembled as I typed a response, my mind racing with questions. "Who is this?" I sent back, hoping for some explanation, some mistake in this unnerving situation. There was no immediate reply, and the silence of my apartment felt heavier than before, charged with anticipation. I debated calling the police, but what would I tell them? That a wrong food order and a cryptic text had scared me? It seemed so trivial when put into words. The knocks had ceased, but the feeling of being watched remained. I moved away from the door, retreating to the safety of my bedroom, locking the door behind me. The unease followed, a constant companion as I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, waiting for a reply that didn't come. After what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was a picture. My heart sank as I tapped the screen to view it. It was a photo taken from outside my apartment, the angle suggesting it was snapped from a slight distance. The quality was poor, taken in the low light, but the subject was unmistakable. It was me, peering out through the peephole not moments ago. Panic set in. This was no mistake. Someone was watching me, playing some twisted game. I dialed the police, my voice shaking as I reported a stalker outside my apartment. The dispatcher was calm, asking questions, assuring me that an officer would be there shortly. I was told to stay on the line, keep away from the windows and doors, and not to engage with the person. The wait for the police was agonizing. Every creak and whisper of noise had me jumping, my eyes darting to the shadows, half expecting to see someone there. The rational part of my mind tried to reason away the fear, but the primal part screamed danger. When the knock came again, it was different. Not at my apartment door, but soft and deliberate against my bedroom window. I froze, a scream caught in my throat. My second-story apartment shouldn't be accessible from the outside, yet the unmistakable sound of someone tapping against the glass shattered any hope of a rational explanation. The police arrived minutes later, but it felt like hours. I didn't move from my spot until I heard a firm knock on my door, followed by a voice announcing themselves as law enforcement. Only then did I venture out of my room, keeping the dispatcher on the line until I could see the officers through the peephole, their badges visible in the hallway light. I opened the door, a rush of relief flooding through me at the sight of them. They were thorough, checking my apartment, looking out the windows, and inspecting the hallway and surrounding area. But they found nothing. No one was outside, no signs of anyone having been at my window. The photo sent to my phone, which I showed them, yielded no clues. It could have been taken by anyone, from any number of vantage points around the building. The officers suggested it might be someone playing a prank, perhaps a disgruntled acquaintance or an ex with a twisted sense of humor. They took a report, advised me to keep my doors and windows locked, and to contact them if anything else happened. One officer mentioned, in an attempt to reassure me, that it was likely a one-time occurrence. He said, "People do stupid things for attention." But the fear I felt was real, and it didn't dissipate with their departure. I was left alone again, the silence of my apartment now a breeding ground for paranoia. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow a potential threat. I couldn't shake the image of the man delivering the food, his obscured face, the wrong order, and the messages. It all felt connected, a deliberate act meant to frighten me. Unable to sleep, I stayed up the rest of the night, lights on, jumping at every little noise. My phone remained by my side, but no more messages came. As dawn broke, the fear began to ebb, replaced by exhaustion and a lingering sense of unease. The daylight brought a semblance of normalcy, but the events of the night had left their mark. I called in sick to work, unable to face the thought of leaving my apartment. The fear of the unknown of what might happen next kept me prisoner. The day passed in a blur of anxiety and restless pacing. I debated whether to stay with a friend or ask someone to come over, but the thought of involving someone else, potentially putting them in danger, kept me from reaching out. As evening approached, the dread began to build again. The thought of another night filled with fear was unbearable. I decided to take action, to not let this unknown tormentor control me. I started by calling the diner again, determined to get some answers. But when I dialed the number, I was met with a recorded message stating the number was no longer in service. Confused and frustrated, I decided to visit Eddie's Diner in person. Maybe there I could find some clue, some connection to the person who had delivered the food and sent those messages. It was a long shot, but I needed to do something, anything, to regain a sense of control. I left my apartment as the sun began to set, the fading light casting long shadows on the streets. The diner was a short drive away, located on a quiet street that seemed deserted as I parked my car in front. The familiar neon sign of Eddie's Diner flickered above the entrance, a beacon in the growing darkness. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and approached the diner, the sense of unease growing with every step. I reached for the door, the cool metal of the handle grounding me in the moment. Little did I know, the answers I sought lay just beyond, and with them, a truth more disturbing than I could have imagined. As I pushed the door open and stepped into Eddie's Diner, the familiar jingle of the bell above the door greeted me, a sound usually comforting, now tinged with apprehension. The diner was almost empty, save for a few scattered patrons lost in their own worlds. The interior was a throwback to the 50s, with checkered floors, red leather booths, and neon signs that cast a warm glow over everything. I approached the counter, where a middle-aged woman with a kind face and a name tag reading Doris greeted me with a smile. She asked, "What can I get for you?" Her voice laced with genuine warmth. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. "Actually, I was wondering if you could help me. I had a strange experience with a delivery from here last night." I started explaining the mix-up with my order, the subsequent messages, and the unsettling photograph. Doris listened intently, her expression turning from one of curiosity to concern. She finally said, "Our app was recently hacked, so we're not able to offer online orders nowadays." Her words sending a chill down my spine. "And you're not the first to come in with a story like this. We've had a few folks in the past week reporting similar incidents, orders they didn't place, and messages. It's all very strange." My mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. If Eddie's Diner didn't deliver, then who had come to my door last night, and why? Seeing my distress, Doris reached out, placing a reassuring hand over mine. "The police are looking into it. It seems someone's been using our name too. Well, we're not sure what their intentions are." I thanked Doris, my appetite for answers now replaced by a gnawing fear of the unknown. As I left the diner, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, but they didn't form a picture I wanted to see. Someone was targeting me, but the question of who and why remained unanswered. In the weeks that followed, I stayed with a close friend, and the police continued their investigation. I share my story not to spread fear, but to highlight the importance of being cautious and protective of our personal space, both physical and digital. In a world where anonymity can embolden certain individuals to cross lines, it's crucial to remember that our safety should never be taken for granted. I'd been working as a food delivery guy for about 6 months, mostly evening shifts that fit well with my college schedule. Delivering in a bustling city had its perks like good tips, meeting different people, and never a dull moment. But there was one delivery that stood out, one that I still can't shake off, no matter how hard I try. It was a typical Friday night, the air crisp with the onset of fall, making my usual bike rides between deliveries slightly more invigorating. The city's nightlife was in full swing, with people crowding the streets, laughter and music spilling out from bars and restaurants. Amidst this, I received a delivery order to a part of town that was unfamiliar to me. An old, residential area that time seemed to have forgotten, standing in stark contrast to the lively downtown I was used to. The address led me to a dimly lit street, lined with aged Victorian houses that had seen better days. The GPS indicated I had arrived, but I hesitated, scanning the houses for the right number. Finally, I spotted it, partially obscured by an overgrown hedge. The house looked deserted, windows dark, paint peeling off the siding, and an air of neglect that made me uneasy. I double-checked the order on my phone, thinking perhaps I'd made a mistake. But there it was, clear as day. Large order for multiple dishes from a popular Chinese restaurant, enough food for a small party. I approached the front porch, the wooden steps creaking under my weight, a foreboding sense of trepidation building with each step. I rang the doorbell and waited, listening to the echo of the chime inside the seemingly empty house. No response. I rang again, this time knocking loudly for good measure. Still, nothing. The silence of the house was oppressive. Feeling more confused than concerned at this point, I decided to call the number associated with the order. Maybe they'd give me instructions to leave the food at the door or inform me of a mistake. However, the call went straight to voicemail, a generic greeting that gave nothing away. Just as I was about to leave, thinking I'd perhaps return the order to the restaurant, the door creaked open. The gap revealed nothing but darkness inside, no sign of the person who opened it. "Hello?" I called out, my voice betraying a hint of anxiety. No answer came from the shadowy interior, only the cold, silent air that seemed to flow from the house like an invisible river. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to drop the food and get out of there, but a part of me was rooted to the spot, curiosity mingling with an inexplicable fear. It was then I heard it. A whisper, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. "Leave it," the said, barely audible over the thumping of my heart. It sounded distant, not from the darkness of the open door, but from somewhere deeper within the house. I complied without a second thought, setting the bags of food on the porch, eager to put distance between me and the eerie, silent house. As I turned to leave, a chill ran down my spine, the feeling of being watched so intense I almost expected to see someone standing in the window. But there was only darkness and the quiet, imposing facade of the house. The ride back to the more illuminated parts of the city was a blur, my mind racing with questions about what had just happened. The encounter left me with an uneasy feeling, a mix of fear and curiosity that lingered long after the night was over. That delivery marked the beginning of a series of strange events, each more unsettling than the last, pulling me deeper into a mystery that I was unprepared to face. Then, another order came through that felt all too familiar. It was for the same old Victorian house. This time, however, I approached the situation with a plan. I had informed my supervisor and a close friend about the order, giving them the address and asking them to stay on the line with me for the duration of the delivery. As I arrived at the house, the same eerie silence greeted me. The street was deserted, the only light coming from the street lamps that cast long shadows. The house, with its peeling paint and overgrown garden, looked as unwelcoming as ever. I left the food at the door and prepared to leave, but then a light flicked on inside the house. It was subtle, barely noticeable from the outside, but it was enough to catch my attention. Curiosity overcame me, and against my better judgment, I called out, "Is anyone there? I just want to make sure you got your order." The oddity of the situation pressed me to linger a moment longer, curiosity edging over my initial apprehension. That's when I noticed a detail I'd missed before. A security camera discreetly mounted above the door. Its small, blinking light indicating it was active. Someone was watching. With a renewed sense of unease, I decided to make a quick round of the house, seeking any sign of the person who'd placed the order. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet, with only the sound of my footsteps breaking the silence. As I moved to the side of the house, I spotted an open window, its curtains fluttering lightly in the breeze. It seemed out of place, an invitation, or perhaps a silent plea for help. Driven by a mixture of concern and an unshakable feeling of being drawn into something far from ordinary, I approached the window. Peering inside, the dim light revealed a room in disarray. Furniture overturned, as if in a struggle. My heart raced, the scene before me painting a picture of urgency and distress. Just as I was debating my next move, my phone vibrated in my pocket, startling me. It was a message from the same number that had placed the order. But this time, it was a single, chilling sentence. "Help me, please." The plea was a stark contrast to the silent, seemingly abandoned house. Without further hesitation, I dialed 911, reporting a possible break-in or distress situation at the address. The dispatcher's voice was calm, instructing me to stay put until the police arrived. The wait was agonizing, every second stretching out as I kept my eyes fixed on the house, half expecting someone or something to appear. When the police finally arrived, I led them to the open window, recounting the events that had led me to this point. The officers moved quickly, entering the house with caution. I waited outside, the night air cold against my skin, the earlier excitement now replaced by a deep concern for the unseen occupant of the house. After what felt like an eternity, the officers emerged. They found the house empty, no signs of a current inhabitant. The disarray inside seemed to have been there for some time, layers of dust undisturbed. But on the kitchen table, under the beam of their flashlights, was a note. Written in shaky handwriting, it read, "Thank you for trying. Please leave." The officers were baffled, their search of the house revealing no clues as to who sent the message or why. They suggested it might have been a prank, but the sincerity of the plea I received weighed heavily on me. As I rode back through the empty streets, the mystery of the Victorian house and its unseen occupant lingered in my mind. The encounter left me with more questions than answers, a puzzle missing too many pieces to complete. The sense of someone reaching out, only to vanish before help could arrive, painted a haunting picture of loneliness and desperation hidden behind closed doors. The rest of my shifts passed without incident, but the memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the unseen lives we brush against every day and the hidden stories waiting just beyond our notice.